Hi everyone, I'm Ananda KD, Assistant Professor, GFGC Ramnagara. Welcome to LMS, Department of Collegiate Education, Karnataka. We have already looked at Pygmalion in the last three sessions. This is the fourth session of the play Pygmalion by G.B. Shaw, prescribed for third semester BSc, Bangalore University. We are going to look at the second act of the play. The place of this act is Higgins' laboratory scene. This laboratory is of language, of phonetics, wherein you can find an image from My Fair Lady, where Eliza Doolittle and Higgins are there in this picture. The second act takes place there. Miss Doolittle comes from uh, Flower Seller's place to this laboratory seeking for teachings from Mr. Higgins. Let me tell you what we are going to learn from this session, the objectives. We come to know Higgins and Pickeram's attempt to teach phonetics to Lisa, and how the characterization develops, and how the transformation takes place in the character of Eliza Doolittle as the play moves on. We're going to learn the conflicting ideologies of Higgins and Mrs. Higgins, uh, and also the social dogma and hierarchy in the English society, how they try to impose their way of life, their style on the other people, particularly Eliza and her father. And we also observe the changes happen in Eliza's character. In this scene, Higgins shows Pickering all the equipment related to language lab. So Pickering is a colonel or ex-soldier who comes from India to London, and there he shows his lab where he used this lab for training the people from the cockneyed dialect or a colloquial dialect, changing them into the sophisticated, elite, rich class speech. Higgins was taken aback by Eliza's request for lessons from him as they met her in the first scene of the first act, at St. Paul's Cathedral. As it was raining, they saw her there and had a verbal clash and came back. But then Lisa comes to his house for seeking tutoring from him regarding the phonetics or speech. She could not afford more than a shilling for a lesson as she's from the lower background. But then Colonel Pickering intervenes the scene and says that he pays for the lessons if Mr. Higgins transforms her into Duchess in 6 months. He seems to be enthusiastic in teaching phonetics to Eliza, that is Mr. Higgins. And in this scene, we can come to know Mrs. Higgins, where she opposes for this act in the beginning, wherein he is concerned about the social condition of Eliza, where she thinks it's not necessary for her to get trained of the rich dialect or whatever Higgins wanted to try upon. Mrs. Pierce informs them that the flower girl wants to take some lessons. Mrs. Pierce is a maid who takes care of Mr. Higgins and his needs. And she informs him that this lady has come there, and she is also apprehensive about her appearance in this context because a flower girl need not require to learn the phonetics or whatever the training Mr. Higgins proposed to give. She wanted to get a job as a clerk in a flower shop. The intention of Eliza is to train herself regarding the style of speaking, to place in a good shop as a clerk, to economically uplift herself. Higgins gets impressed by the percentage of her meager wealth that Lisa is willing to pay for the lesson. She is ready to spare her money or offer her money as a payment for Higgins' tutoring or training. Here we come to know another character, that is Mrs. Pierce, who sensibly asks Higgins about what is to become Eliza after the training. So this we come to know at the end of the play, where her identity crisis she faces in the end. Higgins dismisses these kind of questions as inconsequential. Whatever Mrs. Pierce, as a maid or carer, tries to make him realize this is not a act suitable act from him to train her, change her as a duchess, but then the social stratification or social level may change from outer appearance, but it will lead her to another set of problems after her transformation, which was envisaged by, which was thought by Mrs. Pierce as a caretaker. However, Higgins dismisses whatever she had said, saying that they are inconsequential because his thirst for recognition as a great phonetician in changing people from the lower strata to the upper class from their speech, a polished speech, not a dialect or not a colloquial slang or a kind of speech which is not appreciated at all. So we have looked at in this session how Eliza comes to them and gives offers payment. Pikarim comes to rescue her by offering help, and more important thing is Mrs. Pierce and Mrs. Higgins, another two lady characters appear. Both of them have concern for Lisa. They are not so obsessed with what you call class distinction, and they are also know that what kind of changes happen in Lisa when she has been trained to speak like a duchess, which may seem to change her from outer appearance, but not. She cannot permanently recognized as a upper class lady, and livelihood becomes a problem for her at the end. Neither she's a flower seller nor a duchess as such, which was in the beginning itself expressed by Mrs. Higgins, mother of Henry Higgins, at the same time, Mrs. Pierce, who is, even though a servant, but she thinks very sensibly as such. This material, this points you can get from the reference as it is put from Wikipedia as well. So I conclude this session here. Thank you for watching.